Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lock-Cast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. We're back. Feels like forever again once we're gone. Once we're gone, it feels like I had this 4-day long weekend and we're fucking... I don't know, it just feels like months. I don't know what the fuck it is. But we're back. We're getting right back into the groove. This week we're going to be going over Jack Hermansson against Souza, which is UFC Sunrise, going down in Sunrise, Florida. Great event. We'll dig deep into that a little bit later. But we're going to be doing the casuals today with my man Big Rob.
Yeah.
Hey. So I'm not actually going to be showing him a video this time. I got a little bit of a debate. We're going to have a brief debate about a certain subject that's going to be very... pretty much in the news throughout this fight week because of somebody who's fighting on the card. So, this guy, Greg Hardy. Have you ever heard of Greg Hardy? Are you a football guy? No? Okay, so he was in the NFL. I think he was like an all-star there, or whatever the fuck they call it. I'm not a big football guy anyway. But he got... he's an alleged domestic abuser.
Oh.
So he never got charged.
Okay.
The charges got dropped. But there is valid proof out there of him with bruises on his girl and all that stuff like that. So NFL got rid of him immediately. You know, we want nothing to do with the scumbag, blah blah blah. In comes the UFC and Greg Hardy starts training MMA, and obviously his name is going to bring headlines because he was a big football star, right? So what do you think of people with a past similar to his, whether it's alleged, whatever it is? Do you think that one of the more primitive sports, and probably if you're a fucking a smart ass with a degree and all that stuff, you're really not fighting. You know what I mean? You fight because you may not have something else that's as secure. Let's put it like that.
Okay, so I see what you're saying,
and it's already a hard place for him to get a job, right? So what do you think?
This is a tough one because you should give people another chance, right? People can learn and people can change, right? So you can't judge people for their past. But at the same time, is this guy making money because he's a wife beater, right? Is that what's going on, basically?
Do you mean that as he's only in the headlines because he's a wife beater?
Right. Yeah, it's he can fight. He can fight. Yeah. Look at the I bet he can fight in the ring.
He's not the funny thing is he's not the greatest fighter, but he has so much power and he's so big that he just bum rushes most of these dudes. In the heavyweight division, you can just come in and fucking just beat people with raw power. You don't have to be the most technical guy. And that's why he's made it as far as he has, you know what I mean? But now the UFC has picked him up and they're like, oh, his past is his past. Again, guys still somehow got to make a living. It's going to be hard for him to get any type of job. But he is still athletically gifted. He's going to take advantage of it. I'm so split on it.
Past is the past. Totally get it. And no one should hold him back.
If I'm not mistaken, he shows remorse too. If I'm not mistaken, I might be completely off on that.
That's different,
right? So
I just don't. It's just you don't want to be like, okay, he went from NFL to fighting because of a fighting past of fighting his wife.
It was more so no. That's cruel.
Yeah,
it's more so he's just an athletic monster.
I'm an outsider. Right? I don't get it. I just think he got kicked out of this because he was fighting, and now he's getting picked up for something
fighting.
Else. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I don't know how to really feel about it, and I'm just want to get somebody's outside perspective in terms of, do you think it's okay for him to be fighting in the UFC? Do you think it's okay for the UFC to have hired him for his services based on his touchy past? Yeah, right? That's how I feel, man. Man's got to eat. And, again, still athletically gifted, so he's going to stick around the sports realm if he wants. But I don't know how I feel about it. I really don't know how I feel about it.
It's a tough one.
I have a friend as well who's kind of in MMA and has a very touchy past as well. And I never knew about the touchy past until, maybe 2 years into knowing him.
Okay.
And then... it was interesting after that because he's never been bad to me. He's been the coolest fucking guy, and you would not even think that he would have a past like the past that he had. And then, people I see on the internet are just fucking, fuck that guy, why are you hanging out with him, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I just don't know. I really don't know how to feel about it. All right, let's end this segment with, I want to show him something from our man Mike Perry, who's fighting this weekend. This is a guy that's fighting this weekend.
Okay.
and he's very adamant.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he's...
Let's get this going. It's only 8 seconds.
Okay.
We here to do work, baby. We gonna it up. People gonna bleed. Motherfuckers gonna get cut open, and somebody might die.
That's him trying to sell one of his fights to the media.
Wow.
Like, that's probably one of the greatest gifts, at least in my opinion, in terms of somebody just being so animated and just wanting to sell a fight, doesn't know what the fuck to say. Like, you can't even see as he's talking, he's like stumbling over his words. He goes, motherfucker's gonna die, motherfucker's gonna... I'm like, what the... Chill out, dude.
I think he's more likely to have a stroke. Right
just
there.
from that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Everybody loves this guy.
He's twitching. I don't know.
He's so funny. Probably one of the best. Let's see if we can get this going again now.
Like, how many
killed it.
cups of coffee did this guy have? Like, look at him.
How many snorts?
Fuck. I didn't want to say it, but... Hey, I mean...
I'm sure Mike Perry's the type of, he has a face tattoo.
Yeah.
You have a he has his nickname tattooed over his eyebrow. You can't see it because it's pixelated as fuck, but he has platinum tattooed over his eyebrow.
This guy's in it to win it.
Oh, yeah. That's why people love him.
Oh, my gosh. Wow, what a character.
I know. All right. Well, that was pretty much the casuals. Thank you for your insight, as always, Big Rob.
Anytime.
All right. Let's fucking get into this. First, we'll go over last week's event, which was a slight loss. It still hurt it in the end because there was one of my Lock of the Night plays kind of shit the bed. Even though I thought I had a very good read on it. So let's just go over it real quick. My first Lock of the Night play, which was a parlay of Michel Oleksiejczuk and Movsar Evloev. Still got to master that one. But yeah, man, I thought, as long as Michel could withstand the first 2 minutes, he didn't even fucking need that. He just showed his precision striking. Antigulov just got a little bit too reckless. I could completely see why people were betting Antigulov at plus money due to the very overwhelming style that he has, and we may not have seen the most out of Michel Oleksiejczuk off of his back and how he would react if he were taken down. However, Antigulov just got a little bit too desperate, too crazy, and Michel was able to, or Michal Oleksiejczuk was able to, land those uppercuts, land beautiful shots, and put Antigulov out. Beautiful performance by Michal. And I look forward to seeing what's next for him, man. The light heavyweight division is a poppin', and I'm excited. It was the glamour division of the UFC when I started getting into the UFC. And as of late, it kind of has fallen on hard times. However, guys like Oleksiejczuk, Johnny Walker, I know Alexander Rakic, Dominic Reyes. He showed a little bit of flaws in his last fight, but it's going to be interesting to see how he comes back from that. But 205 is popping, and I can't wait. Another addition to the UFC, Movsar Evloev. Great performance at 145. I wouldn't mind seeing him at 135, which is where he was a champion in M1, if I'm not mistaken. But, beautiful grinding style against Seung Woo Choi. That takedown, the first takedown that he landed in that third round was beautiful. Just absolutely gorgeous. I got my man LV to fucking gift that shit for me and send it to me on Twitter, and I have that saved. So let's just leave it at that. Next up, my other Lock of the Night play that hit was Alistair Overeem, 5 units at minus 231, I believe it was. Profited for 2.16 units, and it was sweaty for a bit. Alistair Overeem does this weird thing where he just shells up against the cage and kind of tries to let the guy gas himself out from going wild and throwing a blitz. I don't know how much you really need to worry about knockout power from Lineker, but if he does that against other guys, they're going to find those holes. Stipe Miocic, I think, would have probably finished Alistair Overeem against the cage there. So, a little bit of a sweat, but once it got to a point where Alistair was really being himself, he just picked him apart with those knees. Beautiful, beautiful knees. Somebody said top 5 knees in the UFC still, and I agree with them. Even if it's not Uberim, he's still hurting motherfuckers with those knees. And yeah, that was in my opinion, easy bet, but say what the fuck you want about that. And then that's where the debacle comes in with the Dog of the Night plays. And my last Lock of the Night play, Marcin Tybura over Shamil Abdurrahimov. That one stung, man. Great odds, minus 147 or minus 141. Gotta see it. But I thought the odds were great considering what we're getting with both guys. I thought we may have seen a little bit more of a grappling style from Tybura in terms of, Shamil hasn't really shown the greatest takedown defense, even though he's a pretty good grappler himself. And I thought that Tybura would throw a little bit more activity. I was ready to give up that first round in terms of, I know that Shamil is not a complete, jack shit. He's not the jack shit. Like, he's actually pretty decent. And I thought at most Shamil would probably win that first round. But that tide was kind of turning in Marcin's favor when that second round started going. But all it took from Shamil was one big shot, and it put Tybura on wobbly legs, and that was pretty much it from there. So it shows in these heavyweight fights. I mean, one shot could change it all. Same thing could have happened to Overeem. Who knows? Alexei could have landed some weird fucking shot and completely stunned and finished Overeem. But this time it happened in the Shamil Abdurrahimov fight. Unfortunate for us. And then my 3 dog of the night plays, I'll go over those quickly. Armen Tsarukyan against Islam Makhachev. I thought plus 350 was a great spot for a guy that showed a lot of, he showed that he could make it a competitive fight, and that's kind of what it was. Even though it was a 30-27 all the way around, Islam Makhachev had to work for that 30-27. So with Armen, I was very impressed. He did a lot of good things in those grappling exchanges, but in the end, it was just Islam's resilience that played off. Just a better grappler, better technique, and he's been at the dance for so long now. You know what I mean? So I think there's a bright future for Armen Tsarukyan. He's only 22. I think he's going to have a deep UFC future, and I can't wait to possibly bet him in the next fight, depending on what his matchup is like. All right, next was Marcelo Gom, 0.5 units at plus 225. Pavlich, pretty much a very hesitant striker at times, has heat in his hands, but the inactivity is what kind of swayed me onto Marcelo Gom here. I was close to parlaying Sergey Pavlovich with Evloev as my lock of the night play, but after watching his past couple of fights, it's kind of it's not really what you want to see when you're betting a guy is that much patience. It's good patience, like he's winning these fights. However, a guy like Marcelo Gom who showed really good leg kicks in his last fight until he actually broke his foot. I thought it was something that Marcelo Gom was going to be able to take advantage of with his activity. That was not the case, unfortunately. So Sergey Pavlovich lands a big shot and ends up swarming and finishing Marcelo Gom. I'm not too mad at that 0.5 unit stab, especially with the odds being what they were. And then lastly, we had Alex de Silva, another debutant that bites the dust. He loses against Alexander Yakovlev. That was a 1.5 unit bet. So that one kind of hurt too. One thing I said in the last couple episodes was, I really want to stay away from betting debuting fighters, but some of the stuff and talent that you saw from Alex de Silva kind of made you believe that he was something different. So, tough L there. I'm satisfied with my Armen bet, considering what we got out of that plus 350. But yeah, it was really the Marcin Tybura lock of the night play, whiffing, that screwed up the night, minus 1.25 units on the night. That fucking sucks. That really, really stings. But, bad slump in the last 2 cards, but we got to get right back the fuck to work. And I just had a long weekend this past weekend. So I did a shitload of studying. Haven't made any bets as of this minute or as of this recording, but there are a couple lines that I am very much interested in. And I think I'm going to make a bet probably later this night, if not tomorrow. I want to see where this certain line goes. And this certain line is going to kick off the card. However, I just want to give you guys my quick thoughts on UFC Sunrise. Jack Hermansson against Jacare Souza. We all know the story. Jack Hermansson finishes David Branch in less than a minute in his last fight, which was less than a month ago. And now he steps in quickly for a quick turnaround against Jacare Souza, which is easily his toughest fight to date. So I saw somebody mention a little bit earlier on Twitter that Jack Hermansson has gone from criminally underrated to vastly overrated now. You know what I mean? And I guess I could kind of see it a little bit. You know what I mean? I think this Jacare fight really will put us into perspective of how good Jack Hermansson actually is, and if it's really his time now, or if, it is true and he is actually the shit. I'm super excited to find out about that. The fact that we have John Lineker against Cory Sandhagen as well. I am so fucking hard for that shit. I'm so excited for that fight. Y'all know I'm a John Lineker ride or die. but very intriguing fight he has against an up-and-coming prospect in Cory Sandhagen here. We also got another kind of budding prospect against an old vet in Ian Cutelaba against Glover Teixeira, a line that was kind of in Ian's favor earlier this week, but now it looks like it's closing, and the line might even flip. Mike Perry against Cowboy Oliveira. We got Andrei Arlovski against Augusto Sakai. The debut of Virna Jandiroba, who is a very interesting prospect here. Yeah, man, there's a lot that this card has to offer. Not to mention Greg Hardy, but I'm not going to talk about that fight too long. Yeah, man, fucking great card. I'm excited to get shit going again this week, and I gotta get my shit together. And I feel like I've put in the work this week to have the best bets possible. It may not be the most bets, but I'm super certain about one bet. And like I said, that's going to kick off our card with Court McGee and Dhiego Lima. So we got Court McGee currently sitting around minus 157 at Sportbet, with Dhiego Lima at plus 143. Court McGee, he's having a very up and down UFC run over the past 6 or 7 fights. I mean, he beat Alex Garcia last time out in October, but that was coming off of 2 losses to Ben Saunders and Sean Strickland. I went back and watched that Ben Saunders fight, and I was interested to see how Court McGee was able to lose such a fight like that. And I understand his unwillingness to want to take Ben Saunders down as much as he normally takes people down. However, Ben Saunders has a very vicious guard. He wants to be on his back. You know what I mean? Like he wants these guys in uncomfortable positions so he can go for these submissions. He's a guy that has a very active guard. So I could see Court McGee's hesitancy to take that fight to the ground. And Ben Saunders was able kind of just to shine on the feet. Kind of outstriking Court McGee there. McGee is a decent striker, but I'd say Ben Saunders has a little bit more heat and more Muay Thai to add to that equation. So I understand the loss to Ben Saunders there. Sean Strickland, obviously a better version of Ben Saunders, maybe not with the same ground game, but a lot harder to take down, obviously. And then Alex Garcia fight, that's kind of the fight that I expect out of Court McGee. Make it a tough, gritty fight, get the takedowns, land big shots from on top, stay active enough to keep the fight in a grinding and very advantageous position. And I think that's exactly what he's going to be able to do against Dhiego Lima here. Dhiego Lima, coming off of a victory over Chad Laprise in his last fight, busting a lot of parlays and upsetting a lot of people because they laid a little bit of chalk on Chad Laprise. But he closed out plus 305 underdog against Chad Laprise. That's ridiculous. But regardless, I do think he is still shit. He is a stand-up striker. So you're kind of fighting him at his game when you put up a guy like Chad Laprise with him. You're making it a competitive fight because both guys are primarily strikers. Maybe Chad Laprise has a little bit more finesse in terms of mixing things up, but he's most comfortable in the striking realm. And obviously, I think he has a big enough ego to think that he would be the better striker than Dhiego Lima. It could have gone either way. Maybe Chad Laprise could have landed that big shot that put out Dhiego Lima, but it was Lima's night that night. But before that are the 2 prime examples of exactly why I think that Court McGee is going to win this fight. Yushin Okami, Jesse Taylor. They both implemented a grapple-heavy game, and it showed. Dhiego Lima is not the hardest guy to take down, and I think that Court McGee's pressure, always staying in your face, his ability to get the fight to the ground, especially when he gets guys up against the cage, he's able to really drag these guys to the floor. And then again, his top pressure, he stays active enough, and I don't know if I don't believe, and I don't think that Dhiego Lima has really gotten anything together in terms of his takedown defense or getting up either. Court McGee is a non-stop machine. That guy has cardio for days. So the paces that he's going to put on in the first is the same pace he's going to put on in the third, and that's going to be very taxing on a Dhiego Lima who's just going to be fighting takedowns, who's going to be fighting pressure. He's not the best when he's fighting on his back foot. So I think that Court McGee really has this fight in the bag. And I'm surprised at some of the love that I'm seeing for Dhiego Lima, to be honest. And that's what's making me a little bit more confident in waiting out this Court McGee line, because I think it's going to get better. It was around minus 170-ish I saw yesterday. Now it's down to around minus 157. I want to see how much better it gets. I'm in no rush. If it hits around minus 180 or so, I'm just going to bet it. But in hopes, probably I wouldn't bet it, but I would wait. I want to wait maybe even minus 140. maybe minus 145. I don't know what people really see in Dhiego Lima. Yes, sure, he's a good striker. He knocked out Chad Laprise. But again, like when you're fighting a completely different monster in Court McGee, who has a great chin, got finished by Santiago Ponzinibbio, but Dhiego Lima's no Santiago Ponzinibbio. I mean, he might land a shot, but Court McGee is really good at keeping his composure and then getting this fight to an advantageous position, which in this fight, I think he has a great advantage over Dhiego Lima here. So definitely going with Court McGee. I am lock of the night deep on his ass. And I think I will bet him as soon as I see a line that makes me want to pull the trigger right away. So, I'm going to take I'm going to take Court McGee by decision. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a finish either, but I'm not confident in betting in the distance prop. So yeah, Court McGee by decision. Fuck. That one had me a little bit fired up. I don't know why. Anyway, let's move the fuck along. Angela Hill versus Jodie Esquibel. So Angela Hill has a relatively quick turnaround. She fought March 23rd, where I bet her as a lock of the night play. And we're not going to talk about it anymore because I don't give a fuck. She lost to Randa Marcos by initiating the same game plan that Randa Marcos probably wanted. And she paid for it. She got armbarred. Before that, she lost a split decision to Courtney Casey, and then won a decision over Marina Moroz before that. She's going up against Jodie Esquibel here, who's coming off a loss to, who did I see? Jessica Aguilar, and then before that, she had her UFC debut against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. This is going to be a stand-up fight. Let's be real. I know Deanna Bennett likes just her boxing, and she's pretty crisp with it. Has a great jab. At times shows good consistency and pace. Angela Hill has more tools in the shed, in my opinion. The minus 300 line that I saw her at is definitely a little bit overblown, and I think that might be the parlay buster this time around. Because Jodie Esquibel, with her pace and her boxing, she could probably stifle Angela Hill here. But Hill, great striker, at least in terms of Muay Thai, good kicks, good consistency, good movement. That might be what screws Jodie Esquibel up as well. Jodie Esquibel might be missing a lot here. Angela Hill is going to be consistently moving, be able to throw her shots and get out. She's going to have a length advantage as well here too, so that could definitely play into it here. But I don't know, man. I just don't feel comfortable playing Angela Hill at minus 300 or even using her as a parlay piece. So good luck to anybody that bet her, but fuck, man, she really burned me last time around, and I think I just have hurt feelings. But it's tough for me to play Angela Hill here. I will pick her to win, but again, I just wouldn't consider it as a bet. I'm going to say Angela Hill by decision. Next up, we got Jim Miller versus Jason Gonzalez. Poor Jason Gonzalez. Last time out, he was put up against pretty much a death sentence against Gregor Gillespie. Nobody wants to fight Gregor Gillespie. He eventually got triangle choked in the second round. Before that, he beat J.C. Cottrell, not UFC level. And then before that, he lost to Drew Dober, who's definitely showing a little bit better talents and skills recently. So whatever, Drew Dober, Gregor Gillespie, not losses to really blink your eyes at. But this is a fight that he really needs to win. In comes Jim Miller, veteran, putting Jason Gonzalez to the test. One thing I like about Gonzalez is he has a lot of length. Sometimes he's able to use it well, but when guys really close the distance and try to get this fight to the ground, they're very successful. Obviously, you can say that about Gregor Gillespie because he's probably one of the greatest, if not the best wrestler in the UFC right now. Khabib may have something to say about that, but that is a fight that I would love to see in the future, by the way. But getting right to it, I think Jason Gonzalez has the power to hurt Jim Miller, but I think that Jim Miller has the grittiness to possibly take this fight to the ground. I would possibly consider Jim Miller if he was plus money, but he's a pretty decent favorite at minus 137 right now on Sportbet. So this might be a pass fight for me because you don't know when that age is really going to show up. Jason Gonzalez could land the perfect shot to put Jim Miller out. But in the same token, Jim Miller could probably get a hold of Jason Gonzalez, drag this fight to the ground, and work for a submission. I definitely think he's the better submission artist here. But Jim Miller knocked out by Dan Hooker back in April of 2018. And that's really the only time he's been knocked out. He got choked out in his last fight against Charles Oliveira back in December. I'm gonna go with Jim Miller here. I just think he finds a way to get this fight to the ground and finish Jason Gonzalez via choke. I just want to have a quick look at the Miller inside the distance odds. Miller inside the distance is plus 165. That's intriguing. But that is something I'll look into a little bit more. But I'm going to say on the podcast, I'm going to pick Jim Miller by by submission, second round. Let's move this bitch along. Gilbert Burns versus Mike Davis. Gilbert Burns is coming off a decision victory over Olivier Aubin-Mercier in a fight that he really impressed me. That was a fight where I thought OAM was going to have the advantage everywhere except jiu-jitsu, but good enough jiu-jitsu to stay out of any submissions and any bad, positions. However, Gilbert Burns comes out here and completely tees off on Olivier Aubin-Mercier, hurting him numerous occasions, and pretty much controlling that fight wherever the fuck it went. I was very, very surprised and very impressed by Gilbert Burns. Another thing was he's always shown issues with his cardio, but it seemed like it was decent in this last fight. He has a pretty decent test coming up in Mike Davis, who's going to be making his UFC debut. Decent all-around guy. He's 7-1, so he's still relatively green. But he's shown, he has shown some improvements, especially since that fight against Sodiq Yusuff on the Contender Series. That was a great fight. Sodiq Yusuff is just a beast, though. You know what I mean? This time in the last two fights against Elvin Leon Brito and Carlos Guerra, showed great striking, great awareness on the ground, too. I was very impressed with them there. But I think this just might be an experience thing here. I think the bright lights are going to get to Mike Davis. Like I said, debuting fighters in the UFC have not been doing the hottest. A guy who's been showing as many improvements as Gilbert Burns and has the grappling credentials that he has. I think this is a very tough test for Mike Davis right off the bat. And I think that Gilbert Burns is kind of deserving of the minus 240-ish range that he's in. So I wouldn't be completely mad at a Mike Davis dog play on some people. But my bet's actually going to be Gilbert Burns by submission here. I think he somehow rocks Mike Davis on the feet, gets the fight to the ground, and submits him. But I'd have to look into it a little bit more, but this fight just doesn't intrigue me in terms of picking a side for betting. But I'm going to take Gilbert Burns by second round submission. I think he catches Mike Davis and puts him to sleep with a choke. All right, next up we got Carla Esparza versus Virna Jandiroba. Don't peep the visual enhancements I needed to make myself because they haven't updated the UFC website yet. But we got debuting Virna Jandiroba, who is replacing... who is she replacing? Carla Esparza was supposed to fight Olivier Hanata Souza. So in steps Virna Jandiroba, the champion over in Invicta FC. She's just been rolling through the competition at strawweight there. She is a very intriguing prospect here. She comes in at 14-0, has beautiful jiu-jitsu, could maybe eventually just find herself being named like the Damian Maia of that division. She's very good on the ground. I'm very impressed with her. My one concern is how is she going to get this fight to the ground? Carla Esparza, say what you want about her, but she has decent grappling. She showed her grappling prowess against Cynthia Calvillo. Very iffy decision against Randa Marcos, which she lost. But, she got completely outclassed by Tatiana Suarez in her last fight. Lost a split decision to Claudia Gadelha in a fight that she probably could have won too. She has good cardio. She's a good grappler. I think she's going to be able to keep this fight on the feet. Then it really comes down to the striking end. I kind of have to give the slight advantage to Carla Esparza here in the striking, if I'm going to be honest. I think Carla Esparza is a slight underdog right now, too. Yeah, plus 113. Yeah, man, if Carla Esparza finds herself in a clinch situation against the cage, I think she needs to get the fuck away ASAP, because even if Virna is able to grab like a leg, I think she might be able to pull her down. But in the open cage, closing the distance, I think it's going to be a little bit of a tough task for Virna here. I want to take. So today, Tuesday of fight week, I want to take Carla Esparza by decision. I think she keeps her on the feet and just kind of outworks Virna in the striking. But if I look into a little bit more, my options might change. So make sure you guys peep the timeline on Twitter to see if my mind has changed for that in any way. But on today, from everything that I've seen thus far, I got to go with Carla Esparza by decision. But I'm very, 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 very intrigued with Virna, and I think that she could, if she could really find ways to close the distance against these girls, she can make a name for herself, and she could find herself in the top 10 with just her jiu-jitsu alone. But I'm taking Carla Esparza by decision here. It's just the uncertainty of Virna being able to get this fight to the ground. That's the main thing in that fight, and I'm going to say that she's not able to. All right, next up we got Augusto Sakai versus Andrei Arlovski. This is a potential dog of the night bet for me. Andrei Arlovski currently at plus 123. He's coming off of 3 losses now to Tai Tuivasa, Shamil Abdurakhimov, and Walt Harris. In a time where people thought that Andrei Arlovski's chin was gone, he's shown that he's able to still go 15 minutes with some pretty heavy striker, Tai Tuivasa. Walt Harris has some heat on his shots. Shamil Abdurakhimov is starting to show his heat after he just knocked out Marcin Tybura. So he's showing that he has a bit of a chin still. And Augusto Sakai has shown that he's 12-1. Okay, cool. But some of his striking is very, very poor. I think that Andrei Arlovski has made a name off himself just from his boxing prowess alone, and I think that might be enough for him here against Augusto Sakai, who just doesn't throw with much volume. He got a ground and pound finish over Chase Sherman in his last fight, but Chase Sherman was having a lot of success there. I think that Andrei Arlovski is going to be able to outwork Augusto here, maybe even hurt him, maybe even get a finish. And I like Andrei Arlovski at dog odds here. His chin is held up, so there's nothing to really worry about there. I know Augusto Sakai has finished his last 3 opponents, but, Tai Tuivasa was just knocking motherfuckers out before. Walt Harris was having a lot of success with his hands too. But Andrei Arlovski was able to kind of withstand all those. So I'm going to go with Andrei Arlovski here by, let's say, second round TKO. But I think he's a live dog here. I think he's one of the more live dogs on the card, and I definitely am considering him for a bet. Want to see where the line goes. Maybe plus 40, plus 140-ish, but I would probably bet it even lower than that. I just want to see how this week plays out with the odds shifting. But I do like Andrei Arlovski here, just a more polished striker, the veteran. I think Augusto Sakai might even succumb to some of the pressures of the brighter lights and fighting a name like Andrei Arlovski. The biggest name he's fought is Czech Congo and Bellator, which is where he lost a split decision. Chase Sherman. So I'm going with Andrei Arlovski here by second round TKO, and definitely considering him for a bet. Next up, we got Takashi Sato versus Ben Saunders. Starting off with Ben Saunders, he's coming off of 2 straight losses, 2 straight finishes as well, to Sergio Moraes by arm triangle choke in a fight I believe I had the fight doesn't go to decision, and against Lyman Good in another fight I believe I had the fight doesn't go to decision. He got knocked out by Good and submitted by Sergio Moraes. He has a very intriguing opponent here in Takashi Sato, who's making his UFC debut. So if trends have told us anything, Takashi Sato is is kind of in some shit as being as a debuting UFC fighter. So you know what we're getting from Ben Saunders. Loves using his Muay Thai, loves using elbows, knees, kicks. Very heavy kicker. And then if the fight goes to the floor, he's comfortable there too. So his issue has been his chin. If guys are able to muster off enough energy and hit the spot properly, they're going to put him out. And I think Takashi Sato has the ability to do that. Ben Saunders is a pretty heavy underdog right now, plus 186, but it's just always tough for me to trust Ben Saunders' chin. So anytime I've really bet his fights, I've bet the fight doesn't go to decision, and it's been more profitable than not. However, this time around, I think we're sitting at like plus 320-ish against Sato in terms of a fight doesn't go to decision. So I don't know if it's worth it to even bet that here. Yeah, man, I can never trust Ben Saunders, especially with that chin, Takashi Sato is a heavy striker as well. You know, he's rocked plenty of guys. He had a very, very, very fun fight with Gladko Franca in his second last fight. But he beat Matt Vale last time around. Great fight there. You know, showed a lot of resilience. He was hurt in that fight. Managed to get his wits about him and come back and finish Matt. But here, if Ben Saunders is able to get this fight to the ground, I think it's going to get very interesting, especially with Saunders being such a big guy at this weight class. But I'm going to go with Sato. I think that Sato catches Ben Saunders' chin, puts him out, and is a decent UFC debut. But again, he's in the minority here, and usually guys that are UFC debutantes don't do that well. So I wouldn't bet on this fight, especially at minus 220. I think that's too much juice on Sato, so I'm going to be passing on that fight, but I'm going to take Sato by first round finish. Next up, we got a very hot prospect in Roosevelt Roberts against a UFC debutant in Thomas Gifford. So starting off with Roosevelt Roberts, this is going to be his second fight in the UFC before he came out and beat Daryl Horcher back in November with a standing guillotine choke. This guy has a lot of chokes on his record. Rear naked choke, guillotine choke. He's like long, nimble, and like lanky, and is able to get his hands into, or his forearm into these places to get these chokes, and it's very impressive. He seems comfortable enough on the feet to where he's getting comfortable with using his range, because he is a very rangy guy at this weight class. And I think it might give Gifford a little bit of issues, who in his own right is a little bit lanky too. I just think that Roberts has better awareness on the ground, and I think that's where this fight is kind of going to get played out. And I think that Roosevelt Roberts is going to be able to catch a choke here. Yeah, I don't have too much to say about that because Roosevelt Roberts is like minus 400 area. I'm not completely sold at minus 400, and even as a parlay piece, you know, I may have missed a boat at like the minus 280, minus 300 range, but I'm going to pass on this fight in total, and I think that Roosevelt Roberts is the real deal here. And yeah, I'm going to take him by choke in the first round. Yeah, not too much on that fight. Next up, we got Johnny Hands of Stone Lineker, probably my favorite fighter in the UFC, against Cory Sandhagen. This is a fight that's been falling through a couple times now, but now we finally get it this week, and hopefully, you know, knock on wood, nothing happens between now and then. But I'm very much looking forward to this fight. John Lineker is coming off a brutal finish of Brian Kelleher last time around. He fought in May of 2018 at UFC 224. Feels like fucking forever. It's closing in on a month or a year for him to have fought. Yeah, it's going to be like 2 weeks shy of a year. But he comes against Brian Kelleher, and he fights a really good fight in that. Brian Kelleher is kind of known as a guy with decent movement, is able to pick his shots and get out of the way. But when you have a guy that has relentless pressure and bombs coming your way, like John Lineker, that is definitely gonna catch up to you, you know. And the one thing that is just not talked about enough, in my opinion, is the way that John Lineker is able to mix up his shots to the body. Fucking beautiful work, like amazing work. I'm very impressed with, you know, the guy's head is always a little bit out of the way, and especially with John Lineker having a size deficiency against a lot of these guys, or a size disadvantage against a lot of these guys, you know, he's got to look for body work, and he shows it in these fights where guys are kind of like trying to pivot out of the way, or just, you know, strafe out of the way, get out of the way of some of these shots. John Lineker just starts tagging the body, and it starts to pile up, it starts to add up, and then he's able to set up the shots that are going to the head. And Cory Sandhagen needs to mind all of his P's, all of his Q's, cross all of his T's, dot all of his I's, because one is all it takes from John Lineker sometimes. And fuck, man, it's a very intriguing fight. Like, odds are right now at minus 127 Lineker, plus 113 Sandhagen. If that line flips, I will throw a little bit of money on John Lineker, because I think, like, he always has a fucking chance. You know what I mean? Like, with his style, with his pressure, with his heat, people will eventually break. Like, his will is not going to break. That TJ Dillashaw fight, you know what I mean? I can't remember exactly when he broke his jaw in the fight, but he had a broken jaw in that fight and still kept coming forward. You know what I mean? He's a fucking beast. He is the fighter that every fighter wants to be when they get into that cage. But, you know, sometimes he's just too one-dimensional. But against certain guys, I think, Cory Sandhagen, who likes to keep most fights on the feet, I think he's going to have a lot of trouble getting John Lineker down here, and I don't think he'll successfully be able to. And definitely his path to victories here is just sticking and moving, and hoping that whatever shot John Lineker is eventually going to land doesn't land clean enough to put him out. But fuck, I can't ever pick against John Lineker, and that's just like that may be a biased thing, but who gives a fuck? This is my show, so I'm going to be biased. I'm going to pick John Lineker by decision here. I'll give Cory Sandhagen the benefit of the doubt in terms of being tough, but I think that John Lineker wins this fight again by consistently pressuring Cory Sandhagen, getting him in bad positions against the cage, landing big enough shots, and slowly, slowing down the Cory Sandhagen movement, stick and move game plan that I believe he's going to come in with. Definitely a huge path to victory for Cory Sandhagen here. So I'm not mad at seeing anybody who's betting on Sandhagen. But I don't know, man. John Lineker is just another fucking animal. TJ Dillashaw just kind of had his number. Somebody has to put an EPO level TJ Dillashaw performance together to beat a guy like John Lineker. So I'm going to take John Lineker here by decision. Will possibly consider it as a bet if he hits plus money. I don't think that will happen. But it's definitely a line that I'm keeping my eye on. But I don't hate anybody picking Cory Sandhagen either. So all props to you if you're betting Cory Sandhagen here. But I'm on the John Lineker fucking train. I think he's going to win by decision. And yeah, just continues to. And again, he's working at an American Top Team as well now. So I think he's doing that for the last couple of camps. But they always come up with great game plans. And even though everybody already knows what John Lineker's game plan is, I'm sure he can make a little bit of tweaks that ATT can be accredited with that will make him even more effective with the pressure style, heavy hitter style that he has. But I'm going to take John Lineker by decision. Next up, we got Glover Teixeira against Ion Cutelaba. This fight was booked way back in January. Unfortunately, Glover Teixeira had to pull out. Was it Glover? No, Ion Cutelaba had to pull out, and then Glover fought Carl Robertson that night. But this is an intriguing fight, another fight where a young upstart or youngish upstart is going up against a grizzled vet. Ion Cutelaba, the Hulk, has a very striking, heavy style. Showed good get-ups against Antigulov, who was very desperate to get the fight to the ground, but just was not able to keep Cutelaba down. And then eventually, Antigulov just gassed, and Cutelaba was able to put him out. Ion Cutelaba could easily land on Glover Teixeira and put him out here. I don't think that's the likely outcome. I think that Glover Teixeira is going to be able to get his hands on Ion Cutelaba and get this fight to the ground and end it with a submission. I'm very intrigued with what the Glover Teixeira by submission prop is going to look like, because I might stab that depending on what it's roughly at. But I think that Glover will get this fight to the ground. I think that there is a reason that the line is closing, because Glover is a slight favorite now, -112 to -102 to Ian on Sportbet. So I'm thinking people are slowly starting to warm up to the fact that Glover Teixeira, shouldn't completely be written off. In his last fight, he was able to survive a huge swarm by Carl Robertson. He was out, but he eventually got his shit back together, got the fight to where he wanted to. I think Ion Cutelaba maybe would have finished him in that scenario. But Glover Teixeira is a big, strong dude, and I think he has a good way of getting fights to the ground. And then he's very well versed on the floor. I think he has a better top game than Antigulov as well. So I don't know if Cutelaba will have as easy of a time getting up. But he got outworked by Corey Anderson. Glover got outworked by Corey Anderson in his last loss. Before that, he showed his grappling dominance against Misha Serkinov, who is a grappling wizard himself almost. Got outstruck by Alexander Gustafsson, beat Jared Cannonier, but with more of a grinding grappling style, and then got knocked the fuck out by Anthony Johnson in 13 seconds way back in August of 2016. So I think with Glover here, again, his path to victory, get this fight to the ground as soon as possible and look for a submission, look to hurt Ion on top, suck it out of him a little bit in terms of his gas tank, and then get the finish. But I think there's a very good likelihood that Ion Cutelaba could catch Glover Teixeira before he's able to get this fight to the ground and pretty much hurt him and put him out. But, yeah, It's been 2 years since Glover's been knocked out. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Glover here. You know, his striking is kind of rudimentary. Like there are only like 2 or 3 shots that he kind of looks for normally, but it's just enough to like keep him from being able to get him to close the distance and then get this fight to the ground. And I think he's going to be able to do that. And again, with that berserker style like Cutelaba, I think Glover is going to have a perfect level change to be able to get this fight to the ground and then get the submission victory. I think the line flip is very just here. But the sub prop is definitely what I'm looking at. So if you guys see that at a good range and think you want to sprinkle a little bit on there, I would suggest it. I'm hoping it opens that, or is at least better than plus 400. That's what I'm looking at. If I can get plus 400 on it, I might throw 0.25 units on it. But yeah, I'm going to take Glover by sub, let's say a second round. I love the second round for some reason, but I think that's where guys are able to like really implement what they need to do to win, because they're able to withstand that first round, and then kind of get a feel of how their opponent is reacting to certain things, and then they're able to implement, you know, the type of finish that they're looking for. All right, next up, we got a fucking banger. I don't know how I can technically break this fight down because I don't think it's going to be very technical at all. Alex Oliveira versus Mike Perry. Mike Perry steps in for Li Jingliang, who had to pull out due to an injury. And I'm super excited. Like, this is one of the few times where if a fight falls out, the replacement is slightly more entertaining than the actual fight that we're going to get. So even though Mike Perry is coming off a loss to Donald Cerrone, you know, everybody wants to see this fucking fight. Alex Oliveira is he lost to Gunnar Nelson his last time out. Before that, he was able to finish Carlos Condit and Carlo Pedersoli. This is going to be fireworks, man. I think that Cowboy Oliveira is definitely the more technical guy here. I think that he has the advantage almost everywhere, but it's just that Mike Perry style of just throwing heaters and throwing bombs that could definitely disrupt it for Cowboy Oliveira. I think that this is a fight where Cowboy is going to mind his P's and Q's. I think he'll still be able to land good shots. I think he's going to look to get this fight to the ground. I think that's where he sees his advantages, and I truly believe that he could take advantage of Mike Perry here. You know, Mike Perry got submitted in his last fight against Donald Cerrone, and I'm not saying Cowboy has the jiu-jitsu of a Cowboy Cerrone, but I think he's good enough in the jiu-jitsu game to be able to get submissions. You know, he was able to submit Carlos Condit, Tim Means. He's had success there, and I think he's intelligent enough to know that he needs to get this fight to the ground. So I think we might see them fuck around on the feet for a little bit, but I think that when, it really starts to set in for Alex Cowboy Oliveira, it might be halfway through the first round where he's going to start shooting for takedowns, get this fight to the ground, and try to control Mike Perry, where, we know that's the weakest part of Mike Perry's game. So I think we're going to get a submission finish for Cowboy Oliveira. Another submission prop I might look into, very intrigued by how this fight's going to go, but I got Cowboy first round submission. A war for as long as it lasts, but I think that Cowboy eventually looks for a takedown and gets a submission victory. Let's see, Cowboy in the distance right now sits at... Come on. Cowboy in the distance. Minus 113. So maybe the sub prop will be slightly better, but I'll take a look at that when that shit comes out. All right, next up we got Greg Hardy against Dmitry Smolyakov. I'm not going to take too long fucking going over this fight. Like, me and my man Big Rob had a discussion about, whether Greg Hardy should even be fighting in the UFC or not earlier in the episode, so make sure you guys, rewind and check that out if you guys just skipped over to this fight. But we know what's good with Greg Hardy. He came out and lost to Alan Crowder via a legal knee. We saw how bad it could get for Greg Hardy if any fight gets past like 3 minutes or 4 minutes, because he's going to be throwing heat all 3 minutes, and if he's not able to knock you out like he was not able to knock out Alan Crowder, it gets very, very ugly. Luckily for him, there's another guy that's kind of like that too, in Dmitry Smolyakov, 9-2, one of the badder fighters or one of the worst fighters in the UFC's heavyweight division. So they're kind of like a match made in heaven, but they're getting way too much shine due to Greg Hardy's name. Let's just put it that way. But this is going to be an ugly fight. This fight is definitely, not going to decision. Dmitry and fucking Greg are just going to throw bombs at each other. I don't know if Greg Hardy ever deserves to be a minus 300 against anybody again. But then again, Dmitry Smolyakov has a loss to fucking Cyril Asker. And if you guys have been watching this podcast for a while now, or listened to this podcast, you know how I feel about fucking Cyril Asker. Yeah, man. You can't feel comfortable betting Greg Hardy or using him as a parlay piece anymore. He by all means, he could probably just come in here and absolutely dust Dmitry Smolyakov. But I'm not willing to trust in him to come through as one of my legs in one of my parlays. But obviously, if you want to throw something from this fight into a parlay, it's the fight doesn't go to decision, which is probably around minus 500 or some shit right now. But these guys are not seeing 15 minutes. Let's be absolutely real. Somebody's going to die from exhaustion or somebody's going to get knocked the fuck out. I'm going to go with Greg Hardy. I don't know. Quicker, faster guy. And Smolyakov is just a fucking joke. Let's be real. So Greg Hardy, first round KO. Done and done. All right, main event, motherfucking time. Super excited for this one. We got Jacare Souza versus Jack Hermansson. Jacare Souza coming off a victory over Chris Weidman at UFC 230 back in November. A fight that was very close. Second round was close. I think that Weidman won the first. Jacare could possibly have won the second. But that third round, man, that was nuts. Jacare really just fucking bit down his mouthpiece, threw haymakers, eventually was able to wrestle Chris Weidman, and then landed a big shot to his forehead, which, I've tweeted out before, but it looks like somebody strapped a fucking magnet to Chris Weidman's back, and it just sucked him into the canvas. And, yeah, it just... huge power from Jacare Souza there. Another thing that he showed in that fight that was very impressive was his left hook to the body. Beautiful. Whenever Chris Weidman was circling out, he was able to land that as kind of like while they're disengaging. But he's always able to land a power shot to the body. And I think that might be a big factor here against Jack Hermansson as well, who has decent movement himself. We all know what Jacare is good at. We all know what he brings to the table with his jiu-jitsu, but he is slowly polishing his striking game. He's a veteran in this sport. His striking looks better and better every fight. I don't know who the guys exactly he's working with in Orlando are, but they're doing good work with him, man. He shows great head movement. In the last fight against Chris Weidman, yeah, he got busted up with the jab a little bit too, but he was showing great head movement, especially for a guy who's primarily a jiu-jitsu guy. In this fight against Jack Hermansson, he's getting a guy who's a little bit more awkward in his style with his striking. He's going to use his length a little bit better. But I think that I don't think that Jack Hermansson wants to engage in the grappling here, which is where he's been able to shine in his last couple fights, especially that quick submission over David Branch. But somebody's put out a stat there again. Jacare Souza, since 2008, has never had his guard passed since he fought... who the fuck did he fight? Jason Miller. So... we know what to expect. Again, like I said, we know what to expect from Jacare Souza on the ground. I don't think that Jack Hermansson is going to want to fuck around on the ground at all. And then it comes to the feet. And Jacare has shown a lot of improvements in his striking, like I said, and it could be interesting. I can't really see Jack Hermansson completely, outclassing Jacare on the feet for 5 rounds. He could definitely win some rounds here and there, but I think that Jacare is so much of a vet that he's going to be able to find a way to get a hold of Jack Hermansson, get this fight to the ground, and implement his grappling. Hermansson, he's not a slouch when it comes to grappling or wrestling, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for Jacare to get this fight to the ground. But once it gets there, I think he's going to completely outclass Jack Hermansson there. It's earlier in the week I was really leaning Jack Hermansson and thinking that there's a lot of value at plus 170-ish. Again, I don't hate anybody that made that bet, but Jacare, I think he's going to come through here. I think Jacare is just going to put everybody back on notice, show he deserves a title shot. Completely decimate Jack Hermansson in my opinion. And yeah, I think Jack's got this. Or sorry, I think Jacare's got this. Jacare, can't blame me, all right? I really think that Jacare has this. I think he's going to find a way to eventually get Jack Hermansson against the cage, drag him to the floor, implement his jiu-jitsu, and possibly even get a submission here. I can't see this one going 5 rounds. The path to victory, I think, for Hermansson here is to catch Jacare on the feet, because we have seen him hurt against Chris Weidman. And I think he has the length and the awkwardness to cause Jacare a little bit of issues on the feet and possibly catch him with something he doesn't see coming. But I think the more likely outcome here is Jacare, surviving anything that Jack throws on the feet, get this fight to the ground, and get a submission. So I will go with Jacare Souza. As much as I really want to see Jack Hermansson win, though, but I think that Jacare is going to have his number here, and it might just show that Jack Hermansson has a little bit of a ceiling when it comes to maybe he deserves to be maybe top 5, but the Yoel Romeros, the Jacare Souzas, the Robert Whitakers, maybe even Kelvin Gastelum if you want to throw him in there, Israel Adesanya, those guys are going to have a decent time against Jack Hermansson. Then again, Jack Hermansson against Israel Adesanya is a very intriguing stylistic matchup. So I hope we get to eventually see that one down the road. Eventually. I know I said it a lot there. But my pick is going to be Jacare Souza by, let's say, 3rd round submission. And blam. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. Tape Index is on Newsom's website. As you guys already know, it's the one-stop shop for you guys if you guys need something for gambling purposes, preparations, I should say. We have all their fight links, every opponent or every fighter's links from the last couple fights, whether it's a direct link to Fight Pass to their video page, or it's a direct link to YouTube, Youku, whatever depths of the interwebs I'm able to scour and find these fights in. I try to get them to you guys through the Tape Index. We also have their fight metric page, which is now called UFC Stats, so you guys can quickly click on that. Boom, it's right in front of you. And their Instagram page, so if you're not following them, you can just quickly click on their page and hit follow from there as well. Yeah, man, I think that we're doing a great thing with the Tape Index. And I can't wait to keep bringing it to you guys. I should have UFC Ottawa done by the time you guys have listened to this, so make sure you guys check that out on Newsom's website. Other than that, Lock Fight League, Week 3 is going to be today, which is Wednesday when this episode drops. And then next season, I've teased it before, I'm going to tease it again. We're going to go into actual players playing against each other. So we're going to be moving away from the CPU simulated format that I've been using thus far. And I think I've come up with a fair set of rules, game plans, and regulations that I'm going to dish out to you guys very soon. But we're going to have a buy-in. We'll have as many people as we can sign up. And then I'll create a season schedule, a tournament schedule, playoffs. And then we pay out the top 3 or however many guys there are. I'll figure out a scale that we're able to pay these guys out. But yeah, I think it's going to be fucking sick. I'm super stoked. I got a lot of visions for this and for the LFL, especially when we're making it real players against each other. And I'm going to make it a fun experience as much as I can. So I'm super stoked for that. What else do I got? So Combative Stories is going to be back next week as well. Me and Tony are going to be recording that. I'll be going on vacation the 2nd week of May. So I'll be sure to record it before I leave and send it out to you guys for your listening pleasure. But I'm having a lot of fun with that. That's going to be a little bit more consistent as well, going from monthly to hopefully bi-weekly. Really excited about that one. And yeah, that's really about it, man. I got to get the fuck back on track. Been a rough last 2 events, but I'm really liking what I'm seeing for UFC Sunrise here. A lot of good spots like you guys have heard earlier in the podcast. And again, feel free to hit me in the comments below. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, do whatever the fuck YouTube asks you. Spotify asks you because you guys are listening through that. Stitcher, SoundCloud, all that shit. Just support a brother. You know what I mean? Show me that there's some love out there. That's it. I'm not asking for no money. Just hit subscribe. That's it. Just show me that you love me. Yeah, man. That's pretty much about it. Again, MMA LOTN on Twitter. Make sure you guys hit me up. And I'm always down to talk on the DMs there too. So if you guys have anything that you want to talk about in terms of some of the bets that I have or takes that I have, hit me up. I'm always down to talk. All right, well, that's pretty much about it. The next one we're going to have is UFC Ottawa, headlined by Cowboy Cerrone and Nala Quinta. Really looking forward to breaking that down with you guys. And I got something cool to share with you guys for that episode. So I'm really looking forward to taking this podcast more and more and more and more. So it's going to be more of a visual experience. So as long as you guys watch this on YouTube, fucking great. If you're watching it on, or if you're listening to it through a podcast, it might be a little bit harder to follow along. But I'll try to make it as interactive and informative as possible. But that's about it. I'm done. We out. Later.